Hari Om. Ajam nirvikalpam nirakaramekam niranandamanandamadvaita purnam param nirgunam nirvishesham niriham parabrahma rupam ganesham bhajemam. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Namaste. Welcome to session 103 of Bhagavad Gita, verse by verse, to continue study of chapter 13. Today, we will take up the final set of verses from 31 to 35 of this chapter, in which Krishna is winding up his teaching of Karma Yoga. We will have chanting of these verses at the end of class. Before study of these verses, let us brush through the verses 26 to 30 we studied in our last class. Krishna has started winding up this chapter from verse 25. In these verses, Krishna deals with Jnana Sadhanani followed by Jnana Phalam. Verse 26. The verse is like a landmark judgment. See the clarity with which the great master is declaring. He is telling Vedanta Shravanam need not necessarily be the original scriptures themselves. No. It is not at all necessary to study Upanishad only or Gita or Brahma Sutra only. It is not the text that matters, but the content. If a guru takes the essence of all Shastras and presents it in a different language like English, Russian, Chinese, any dialect of any vernacular, it is perfectly okay. Anyetu. There are a few people, evam ajanantaha, who are not accessible to the original and fundamental scriptures, but gather the teaching anyebhyah shrutva upasate of such gurus who themselves have the knowledge of the originals. They be even those people, shruti parayana, who are committed to the words of the guru are bound to gain moksha. Such committed students will mrityam tarantyeva, certainly cross mortality, finitude, otherwise called samsara. It is interesting to note Vedanta is intertwined in vernacular folk songs, Marathi abhangas of Santa Tukaram, Namdev, etc., Kannada kritis of Purandaradasa, Kanakadasa, Telugu composition of Tyagaraja, Doha of Kabir, and so on. If a person knows the content without studying the Upanishads, he is liberated. Or, on the other hand, a person who has gone through all the Upanishads but does not know the content, he is not liberated. What liberates is not the Veda, but it is the content teaching in the Veda. So, even if one does not study Vedas, he can get liberation. Krishna declares. With the next slide, we'll go to the shloka 27. Swami Dayananda ji beautifully says, a temple might have 4 doors, 4 gopurams, but the Garbhagraham has got only 1 door to the Lord. Similarly, for preparation, many doors are there. But for moksha, there is only 1 door, Jnanam. Jnanam is the only way to remove Ajnana. Samsara is caused by ignorance and error. Ignorance is not knowing that I am the Purusha, and error is that identifying self with Anatma or Prakriti. Purusha is Purna, contented, but Prakriti is not. Hence, the desire generates, and therefore, Apurnatvam leads to Kama, Kama leads to karma, karma leads to punya papam, which lead to sukha, dukkha, and finally punarjanma. Every living being, moving or non-moving, is born through the cycle of birth and death only because of the fundamental mistake of wrong identification of Purusha as Prakriti, claiming that I am body. To remove Ajnanam, there is only one remedy, Jnanam. Let us move on to shloka 28, from where Krishna turns to Jnana Phalam. Next slide, sir. The benefit mentioned here is Sarvatra Samadarshana, seeing the changeless Atma, which is in and through the changing Anatma. Therefore, he says, Vinashyatsu Sarveshu Bhuteshu. Here, Bhuta means body-mind complex, which are innumerable and are subject to birth and death. And all of them are different in nature. Amidst the different innumerable perishable bodies, there is one imperishable thing, Parameshvara, the very changeless Atma in everyone. So Krishna says, Samam sarveshu bhuteshu tishtantam parameshwaram atmanam yah pashyati. One who does not lose sight of this Atma, that is one who has got Samadarshanam, Advaita Darshanam, Abheda Darshanam, Saha Pashyati. He alone has got the right vision. Samadarshanam, he is called a seer. This is the first benefit. In the next slide, we will see the second benefit in Shloka 29. In this verse, Krishna gives the second benefit of this knowledge, Amrutatva Prapti, or immortality, or transcending mortality. Samam Pashyan Sarvatra. The wise person learns to have the Samadarshanam in and through the Vishamadarshanam in all states, in all conditions. Samavasthitam Ishwaram. Ishwaram here means Purusha, the Atma. It is Arupa Ishwaram, free from all attributes. Samam, which is the same in everyone. The wise person sees this all the time, in all these places. Therefore, Krishna says, such a wise person who is a Jnani and he does not destroy himself, na hinasyatmanatmanam, he has discovered immortality. And that is said in the last portion, param gatim yanti. Param gatim means immortality. Amrutatvam is the second benefit Krishna explains. Next slide, sir. In this shloka 30, Krishna gives the third prayojanam, akartrutva prapti, discovering the fact that I am akarta. I am not a doer of any action. Dehabhimana is the cause of kartrutvam, which leads to bhoktrutvam. The moment I drop the prakriti abhimana and claim that I am purushaha, that purusha owning up alone will take me out of both kartrutvam and bhoktrutvam. Therefore, Krishna says all the karmas, by all means, sarvashaha, whether it is kaikam, vachikam, or manasa, whether it is dharmikam or adharmikam, all of them are done by prakriti. Prakritya eva kriyamanani. And this wise person is very much aware of that. So, he does not identify with the body-mind complex, but with Atmanam. He does not say, I am doing. He says, in my presence, Prakriti does everything. Then who am I? Atmanam akartaram sapashyati. He sees, I am akarta, and therefore, I do not have sanchitam. I do not have agami. I do not have prarabdham. So, the third Gnanaphalam is akartrutva prapti, discovering the fact that I am akarta. Let us see the other benefits in the last 5 verses in today's class. Now, I request Dr. Hegde sir to give a brief introduction of the topic of today's session. Please, sir.
Thank you very much, Venkatesh Prasad, for a very nice summary of the 5 verses we studied in the last class. Sadashiva Samarambam Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam. Om. We have completed the study of we will be completing the study of the 13th chapter in the 5 verses that we are going to study today. Advaita Vedanta, according to Advaita Vedanta, our true nature is Sat, Chit and Ananda. It is time to revise these fundamental principles any number of times because this should become our Nishtha. In this chapter, we study again and again, both in the topics on Prakriti, Purusha, and the topic of Niyam, as well as Kshetrajna, that I, or the real me, is someone other than whatever I experience. I experience the world around me. I am not the world around me. More importantly, I am not this body and mind. In the next chapter, which we will be studying very soon, we will learn that our true nature is Guna Atita. I am Nirguna. That means I have no attributes in time, therefore I am Nityaha. I am there for all time. There is no question of Marana or mortality for me. I seem to be located here, but this is because of my body-mind. I have a feeling of limited limitations, but the real me is all pervading. What is the aim of Vedantic study? Once we have understood Krishna's teaching of Niyam, we have to train our minds to claim that this consciousness within me is the real I, and this body-mind is only for the purposes of Vyavahara. So we have two I's. One is the limited I for transaction purposes, but the real me is the Atma. Arjuna asks 6 questions. What is Kshetram? What is Kshetrajna? What is Jnanam? Here it means values. What is this topic of Neyam? Where Shri Krishna says, Neyam is something what everyone must know. What is this Purusha and what is this Prakriti? We learned already that the most important topic is Neyam, that which all of us must know, which is the same as Kshetrajna, or the experiencer, or the consciousness principle, which is the same as Purusha. We have learned again and again that as body-mind complex, as Ahankara, I will solve one problem, but then there will be another problem. So there is no permanent solution to any of my problems. The more I see myself as Sakshi, clearly there is no problem. So what do? Remember in transactions, not only in class, that I am the Sakshi, playing this limited role of body and mind. We all go through samsara because of ignorance of this true nature and wrong identification. So if that is the problem, what is the solution? Correction of this ignorance through right knowledge, and make a correct identification that I am the Atma. And therefore, this understanding should be there all the time, which we can call it as Drigdrishya Viveka or Kshetrajna Viveka. Then what happens? All of us have clearly defined roles as a father, as a husband, as a doctor, as a driver, as a teacher. Now, whatever is my role, play that role 100%. And also remember that don't take anything seriously, but take it sincerely. In conclusion, this is the take-home message at the conclusion of the 13th chapter. Remember all the time, I am Atma Brahma. Because of ignorance of this nature, because of ignorance of this knowledge that I am the Kshetrajnam, I am the Purusha, I begin to claim this body-mind and I lose sight of the fundamental truth. In order to make this a nishta, we require a very sensitive and a subtle intellect. This conscious existence where we say I am is Brahman, and that Brahman I am. And how do we remember it? The Mahavakya, Aham Brahmasmi. With this introduction, let us study the verses of this chapter. We have a set of 5 wonderful verses. The opening verse 31 will be explained to us by Panaga. Panaga, please.
Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. After listing the 3 Gnanaphalam that we heard in the recap, Shri Krishna lists the ultimate, the final Gnanaphalam in this verse. Yada bhuta prithak bhavam ekasthamanupashyati tata eva cha vistaram brahma sampadyate tada. When one sees the diversity of beings to be located in the one, the self, and their origination to be from that self alone, one becomes Brahman. This is a significant verse with deep meaning where several steps of Vedantic teaching are hidden. Swami Paramarthananda gives 2 examples to explain this verse, space and the dreamer waker example. Let us begin with Akasha or space. Space per se is difficult to understand because it is too intangible and invisible. We think space is emptiness or nothingness. Our first learning is there is something called space within this room or hall that they're sitting in. Next, we realize that even if there are multiple halls of different sizes and shapes, the space that exists within them and outside of them is the very same. This undivided, all-pervading space supports all structures. Lord Krishna then makes the profound statement that you are that space-like consciousness in which the entire material world is born, exists, and resolves into. In the next slide, let us come to the second example of the dreamer waker. Imagine we are dreaming. It appears so real that we intensely experience everything: people, places, situations, words, actions, and emotions. But the moment I wake up, I immediately disidentify myself from my dream body, my dream mind, and the dream world, and have no attachment whatsoever towards them. I know that the dream body and the dream world are not real. I created the dream world in my mind, sustained it for a certain length of time, and it resolved into me when I woke up. Therefore, I am not a product of the dream world. Rather, the whole dream world is itself a product of my mind. And the waker me is the Srishti, Sthiti, and Laya Karanam of the dream world. Next slide, sir. Extending the dreamer example to the waker. Vedanta says, my current body, created by perishable matter, will only last for a certain period, which is called my lifetime. Not only my body, but also everything I'm attached to. My mind, my family, my profession, and possessions will also eventually cease to exist. I do my duty, but now I know that this material world, however beautiful, however difficult it is temporary. I start waking up to my higher nature, the unchanging, eternal consciousness from which this vast, diverse material world is born, exists, and will ultimately resolve into. Lord Krishna tells us that we are that consciousness. Coming to the verse in the next slide, Anupashyati, the wise higher waker, the Jnani, having woken up with the help of the Shastras and the Guru, sees. Pashyati is sees. What does he see? Bhuta Prithak Bhavam, the existence, the sthiti of the diverse, manifold universe of living beings. And where does he see this pluralistic universe? Ekastham, the one, non-dual Atma, which is himself. Hence, the Jnani is the sthiti karanam. The eva, when this Jnani knows that this Atma alone, cha vistaram, is also the origin, the emergence, the srishti karanam of the universe, Brahma sampadhyate. He attains Brahman. Therefore, when the Jnani truly realizes in his heart that the Atma, his own higher nature, is this srishti, sthiti, and laya karanam, only then and then alone he can claim Aham Brahmasmi. This is the final and ultimate benefit of Jnanam. This is immortalized in the famous shloka from the Kaivalya Upanishad. Mayeva sakalam jatam, Mai sarvam pratishtitam, Mai sarvam layam yati, Tad brahma dvayam asmiham. Thank you. Hari Om.
Thank you, Panaga, for a very brilliant explanation of a very, very important verse where we need to see ourselves as Atma with two beautiful examples as the dream example and the example of space. What this verse essentially says, there is a nice poem from Tagore which says, when one knows thee, then alien there is none. I have modified this to say, when one knows Brahman, or when one knows one's true nature as to who am I, just like I am that space-like consciousness and everybody else is the same. Everything else is the same. It is like one gold from which everything has come. Once you understand your true reality and you see that in you, you see that elsewhere outside, this is the understanding of that Mahavakya, Aham Brahmasmi. And that is what this verse so beautifully explains. Smita, verse 32, please.
Hari Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Anaditvam nirgunatvat paramatmaya avyayaha sharirastopi kaunteya nakaroti na lipyate. Being birthless and attributeless, this supreme self is changeless. Though dwelling in the body, it neither acts nor is affected, O Arjuna. Self-knowledge can be compared to waking up from dream. Even though there are many similarities between self-knowledge and waking up from dream, there is one major dissimilarity. When we wake up from dream, the dream totally disappears from our experience. The dream world totally disappears. But in the case of self-knowledge, we do wake up from this dream, but even after waking up for some time, this world continues to appear in front of us. And therefore, Jnani knows that he is a Karanam and the world is his projection only, but the world continues to appear. Jnani continues to live in the world, continues to be in the body also, but he has the knowledge that the body is like dream and I am like the waker. And whatever gain and loss in dream will not make any difference for the waker who has a higher nature. And therefore, Lord Krishna says here, I am Paramatma Avyayaha. I, the Atma, my own higher nature of consciousness is Avyaya. Avyayaha is not subject to any change. Therefore, Atma is Avyayaha. Avyayaha means Nirvikara. It is Satvikara Rahita. Just as a waker is not wet by the dream rain, not burned by the fire, dream fire, whatever happens in the dream world, the waker is not affected. Similarly, I, the Paramatma Avyayaha, and the reason is Anaditvat, because the Atma is without a beginning. Birth is one of the 6 modifications. If birth modification is not there, all the other modifications are also not there. Therefore, Atma is Avyayaha and Nirgunatvat. Since Atma is attributeless, there is no attribute-wise modification also. Modification is twofold. When milk becomes curd, the modification is substance modification. The milk substance itself has undergone a change. So this is called substantial change. When ornaments are made of gold, when gold becomes a bangle, there is no change in the substance, but the change is only in the superficial form or an attribute. Thus, the change is twofold. One is substantial and the other one is attribute change. Atma does not have both changes. Atma being birthless, it does not have substantial change. Atma being attributeless, it does not have attribute change. And this Atma is Sharirastha Api. Even after waking up and knowing that I am Atma, I continue to be in the body. But what is the advantage? Na koroti na lipyate. That is, Atma remains akarta, free from actions, and na lipyate continues to be abhokta. The shariram has got actions and results. Mind has got actions and results, but Atma does not have karma and phalam. Samsara is defined as kartratva and bhoktrutvam. Only doership and enjoyship is samsara. Atma is free from both. Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Smita, for a nice explanation of another very, very powerful verse, which is again a Mahavakya, where Shri Krishna helps us to realize that we have been there from the very beginning, if there is a beginning. Anaditvan, Nirgunatvat. I do not have any gunas, no attributes. I am Paramatma. I am indestructible. I am located in this body for transactional purposes. Even though so much is happening, I need to see myself as the real me does not do anything. And because I do not do anything, I'm not affected by anything. This is a anchoring on your higher self and observing you in and through all the actions of the day. We have two more verses where Shri Krishna gives two beautiful examples. One example is the example of space, and the other example is the example of light, which will be explained to us by R.V. Bhaskar. Over to you, Bhaskar, for verse 33.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. The verse goes like this. Yatha sarvagatam saukshmyat akasham nopalipyate sarvatra vastito dehe tathatma nopalipyate. This shloka expounds that space is the subtlest matter and all pervading, yet unaffected. So too is the Atma, abiding in all the states in the body, yet is untouched. It is intriguing to unravel this paradox through Lord Krishna's quoting the two popular examples of the Upanishad, Akasha and Prakasha. Akasha has no proper synonym in English, and the nearest suitable word is space. The word Akasha is derived from Avakasha, meaning accommodative. Space is subtle, immaculate, all-pervasive, and has no form. Thus, space can't be objectified. Alas, it can't even be picturized. Well, the two slides about space we are told is just a tip of the iceberg. Since it's so exhaustive, subtle, it can't be picturized. Well, the modern day scientists, after the space odyssey, for once they say space is emptiness, and later postulate it as ether, whereas scriptures emphatically say space is not emptiness and nothingness. Furthermore, space is immanent and transcendent, which means space is associated with everything, but not affected by anything. This is a speciality. Swami Paramatmananda presents an ideal example to convey the clarity of immanence and eminence. Supposedly, you are watching the movie Titanic. Observe that the screen gets associated with every scene, and you too are immersed in it. And in the climax, the luxury liner Titanic capsizes, and the ocean water literally floods it. You will notice after the movie is over, the screen doesn't get drenched at all. It's so fresh for the next show. This illustration is so true to the Atma, and Lord Krishna narrates that whatever temperament your mind experiences through anger, joy, frustration, or maybe even dirty thoughts, yet the Atma is unaffected, untouched, and not tainted. Well, space and Atma share several common features. Swamiji refers some of these commonalities. Ekatvam, ekatvam. Atma, ekaha. Akasha, ekaha. Space and Atma is only one. Sarvagatam, space pervades everywhere. Achalatvam, space does not move, being all pervasive. Nirvikaratvam, space remains the same and doesn't undergo any change at all. For instance, it doesn't get old or doesn't go out of shape. Akhandatvam, indivisible. It can be cut into pieces. Sukshmatvam, space cannot be touched, smelled, tasted, or even seen. It can't be comprehended intellectually. Asangatvam, space doesn't get tainted with the status of the environment, whether it be foul smell emanating from the debris or fragrance from the perfume factory. It doesn't matter. Sarva adharatvam, space accommodates or supports the entire cosmos and hence Vishwadharam. Well, a question arises. With all these common virtues of Akasha and Atma, why can't Atma be called Akasha? Well, Akasha can only be likened to Atma since Akasha is Jada Tattva or Achetana Tattva, whereas Atma is Chetana Tattva. Summarizing this sloka, This sloka says, Akasha is subtle, cannot be defiled by gross, and so also is Atma akin to space. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, Bhaskar, for a nice
Sir.
explanation of this verse, which has been explained as if Atma is like space. And space is sarvagataha. It is all pervading. It is extremely subtle and it is not affected by anything. We will have one more similar example, and that will be the example of light, which will be explained to us by Dr. Asha Naik. Dr. Asha Naik, please.
यथा प्रकाशते क्यः कृष्णं लोकमिमं रविः क्षेत्रं क्षेत्री तथा कृतं प्रकाशयति भारत. यथा एक रविः, this one Ravi, prakashayati, illumine, imam krishnam lokam, this lok, that is universe, total universe is prakashayati. Tatha kshetri, like that, prakashayati, illumine, krishnam, this kshetra is illumine Bharata. Next slide, sir. Ekatvam, sunlight is the only one because there is only one sun. Sarvagatam, the sunlight pervades the entire earth. Achalatvam, sunlight does not move because it is already everywhere. Nirvikaratvam, the light does not undergo any change at all. When I move the hand, light is not moving or changing. Asangatvam, the light does not get polluted even when it falls on my hand. Light falls on my hand, but light does not get dirty. Akhandatvam, light is partless. Light is achetaya, cannot be cut. Adahaya, cannot be burned. Akledaya, cannot be weighted. Soshaya, cannot be killed. Light illumines everything just like Atma illumines. Next slide, sir. Here, to conceive conscious principle, the example is given Prakasha and Akasha. Prakasha is just as one sun illumines the entire world, so also does the Kshetrajna illumines the entire Kshetram. Next slide, sir. Here, Akasha, Prakasha and conscious have similar examples like Ekam, Achalam, Akhandam, Asangam, Sarvadharam, Alepka. Next slide, sir. Here, Atma's definition is given. I, the Atma, not polluted by anything. I experience everything by mere presence. I, the Atma, give life to the body and through the body. I never get affected by any event in external world as well as body-mind complex. Ignorance and wrong perspective makes me sansari. Experience can never make me sansari. Therefore, moksha, I need not escape from the world. I can continue and still be free. Therefore, Vedanta says, change the perspective, and then you don't have to do anything else. Next slide, sir. Conscious is illumine of everything like sun. Ekaha Ravi, one sun or sunlight. Istam lokam prakashaya. Illumine this entire universe, but without getting polluted by that. Here you have to remember the sun is not, or Prakasha Atma, not doing anything. It is not action or it is not will. It is their DNA or Prakriti. They don't do anything at all. Next slide, sir. Kshetram. Kshetram is world plus body mind. Correct is I am Jivatma. Kshetrajnam. World minus body mind complex is Paramatma. Perceptive change in inclusion, exclusion, that is all is here. Once body-mind complex changes, becomes dushta chatushtaya, and ahankara, mamakara, raga, dvesha start. So I become Mahajivatma, Kshetram. I am Ekatma, who is known as Jivatma by Ajnani and who is known as Paramatma by Jnani. Like people have two names, one inside the house and one outside the house. Among Ajnani group, I am called Jivatma, and among Jnani group, I am called Paramatma. Next slide, sir. Here, this shloka is borrowed from Kathopanishad to compare Prakasha as well as Brahman. Prakasha cannot be touched, taste, smell, hear, even see. Therefore, it is Sukshmatma. Same, Brahman is soundless, touchless, colorless, tasteless, smellless, beginnerless, endless, changeless, and beyond Mahat. Having already known that, Brahman is totally free from jaws of death. Next slide, sir. Sun example and Atma example, they are giving two important messages. One is Ekatvam, one is Alepka. Ekatvam is sun and Atma are only one, but they illumine the whole world like a lighthouse hill. Also, Jivatma and Paramatma are seen. Alepka is unpolluted, uncontaminated, ever free. Ekatvam is for intellectual important. Alepka is for emotional. You do not get polluted by emotions. Next slide, sir. Here, this is another example with the Surya and Atma. Transcendental Atma does not get affected by sorrows, whereas Sun also does not get affected by external impurities. Next slide, sir. Here, during meditation, I am not Mukta. If and when I remember, I. But remember or not, I am Mukta only. So both examples occurring in these two shlokas are very good for Nididhyasana. That is, I am Akashvata Prakashvata Sarvagata Alpita Cha Asangoham. Hari Om.
Thank you very much, madam. That was a brilliant explanation based on your own understanding to see how Atma can be compared to light and to claim I am that Atma, which is like the sun. And you brought through very nice slides comparing Atma to light and to the sun, and all the qualities in the sense that it is all pervading, it does not do anything, it is not affecting, it is akarta, abhukta, and at the same time, it is the illuminator of all. We come to the last words of the Bhagavad Gita, 13th chapter, will be explained to us by Chaitanya. Chaitanya, please.
Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. From verses 25 to 35, Krishna sums up the teaching and presents its sadhanam and phalam. So the final benefit of this knowledge as Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya is given here in this last verse. It goes like this. Kshetrajnyor evam antaram jnana chakshushaha bhuta prakritam moksham cha ye viduryanti te param. So Krishna states, ye vidu antaram, those who understand the difference. Difference between what? The difference between Kshetra and Kshetrajna and Bhuta Prakritim Moksha. Knowing that you as consciousness is separate from the nature of Prakriti. Here Moksha means the absence of real existence, Mithya. That means Prakriti has got only borrowed existence, it is Mithya. So how does one see this difference? Only through Jnana Chakshushaha, with the eyes of wisdom. And what happens to those who understand this difference? Te yanti param. They reach or they gain the ultimate goal. Here Krishna uses the word Jnana Chakshushaha. What does it mean? It means by the knowledge gained through Guru and Shastras, wise people recognize the difference between consciousness and matter. So the difference is in terms of intellectual understanding only. Like the hand and light are not physically separated, but intellectually we know the difference. Now there are several differences between consciousness and matter. But here in this verse, Krishna emphasizes on one of them, Satyam and Mithya. He says, consciousness is Satyam and matter of Prakriti is Mithya. Consciousness alone exists independently. Matter cannot exist independently. Just as the screen exists independent of the movie, but the movie characters cannot exist independent of the screen. Therefore, Mithyatvam of matter indirectly means Satyatvam of consciousness. Wise people recognize this fact that Aham Satyam and everything experienced by me is Mithya. And therefore, the world cannot affect us emotionally. That is Brahma Satyam, Jagan Mithya. That means Jnana Chakshuhu, the eyes of wisdom, shifts one to the binary format from the triangular format or the Laukika Chakshu. For worldly transactions, use Laukika Chakshu, but in the background, keep this Jnana Chakshus all the time. Whoever has got this vision attains moksha here and now, says Krishna. Such people alone attain freedom from the fear, from the fear of the world. That is called Jivan Mukti. With this final benefit, Krishna concludes the topic of Jnana Phalam and the 13th chapter. So in conclusion, the teaching of this entire 13th chapter is here. Samastha Adhyaya Artaha or Upasamhara Artaha. The wise people recognize the difference between Kshetra and Kshetrajna, that is matter and consciousness, through the eyes of wisdom. They recognize that Atma exists independently. It is Satyam, and the matter depends on Atma for its existence, borrowed existence or Mithya. This clear understanding leads one to moksha. This is the ultimate benefit of this knowledge. Therefore, the aim of the 13th chapter is only to change our perspective. You already have that what you are looking for, but we are looking in the wrong directions. Hari Om, thank you.
Thank you, Chaitanya, for nicely explaining this concluding verse, where Shri Krishna wants us to clearly understand the difference between Kshetra and Kshetrajna through spiritual knowledge, which he says is through the Jnana Chakshu. When you have this eye of wisdom, you know that I am someone other than the body. Although I have always been claiming I am the body, and it seems that the aging of my body is my aging, the sickness of my body is my sickness. But through spiritual knowledge, we realize that we need to keep ourselves one step apart. I see my body aging. I see my body sick. I'm able to say my body is going through certain problems, but I am someone other than this body. And the more I give this gap between my body, that is where I am able to attain to true spiritual freedom and true moksha through this understanding. We have come to the end of a very beautiful 13th chapter, and in the next class or next week, we will have a summary of the entire chapter. We are interspersing each of these classes with Disha. Disha is a method of revising the Bhagavad Gita, and in Disha session 15, we will be studying the introductory 8 verses of the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, where Shri Krishna introduces himself as an avatar, an opportunity for us to revise again the 4th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We will have chanting of these verses by Narayani. Over to you, Narayani.
Hari Om, Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Yada bhuta pritag bhavam ekasthamanupashyati tata eva cha vistaram brahma sampadhyate tadaha anaditvan nirgunatvat paramatmayam avyayah sharirasthopi kaunteya na karoti na lipyate yatha sarvagatam saukshmyat akasham nopalipyate sarvatravastito dehe tathatmanopalipyate yatha prakashayatyekah कृत्स्नं लोकमिमं रविः क्षेत्रं क्षेत्री तथा कृत्स्नं प्रकाशयति भारत क्षेत्रक्षेत्रज्ञयोरेवम् अन्तरं ज्ञानचक्षुषा भूतप्रकृतिमोक्षं च ये विदुर्यान्ति ते परम् Om Tat Saditi Srimad-Bhagavad-Gitasu Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Sambade Kshetra Kshetrajna Vibhaga Yogo Nama त्रयोदशोऽध्यायः हरि ओम् श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः हरि ओम्.
Thank you, Narayani, for a wonderful chanting. Thank you, speakers of the day, for a delightful session. Next Friday, on 1st of July 2022, we'll have a recap session where we'll be revising the entire 13th chapter. Before that, on Monday, 27th June, let us log in for Disha 15 at 6:45 p.m. Hari Om. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hari Om. Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Hari Om.